Welcome back to Choirwire, the podcast keeping music educators connected to the art of teaching. I'm Alex, your host. Today we're diving into a topic that is really important to the community aspect of our classrooms. Harmony for all, inclusivity in the choir classroom. Whether you teach middle school beginners or high school show choir stars, creating an inclusive space isn't just a nice to have. It's the heartbeat of a thriving program. So let's talk about what inclusivity means, how we can build it intentionally, and why it transforms everything. Inclusivity isn't just about who's allowed to join choir. It's about who feels seen, heard, and valued once they're in the room. It's making sure every student, regardless of background, ability, identity, or experience, feels like they belong. It's designing systems that celebrate growth, not just perfection. It's choosing repertoire, routines, and language that reflects the diversity of our students and the world they live in. And let's be real, choir is uniquely positioned to model this. We literally teach harmony, different voices coming together to create something beautiful. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Choose music that reflects a range of cultures, languages, and traditions. Invite students to share songs from their heritage. And when you program music from outside your own culture, do the research, honor the content, and teach it with care. Bring in somebody that's really familiar with the content and the culture instead of trying to make it up. Use affirming student-centered language. Say, we're learning together, instead of, you should know this. Celebrate effort, not just outcomes. And when mistakes happen, normalize them as a part of growth. Inclusivity isn't something we do to our students, it's something we build with them. When students feel ownership, they show up differently. They take pride, they take risks, they lift each other up. We should also never make assumptions based off of what we visually see represented in our students. Here's a story. I was in college, and it was one of my techniques classes. I highly doubt this person will listen to this podcast, so I'm going to tell the story. For this specific techniques class, this professor mentioned that we were going to sing at a specific location. I'm not going to mention the location for the sake of keeping this person anonymous. But they wanted us to sing at this specific location. Not a typical location that you'd think that this techniques class would sing at. We're thinking here like taking the classroom outside of the real classroom here, teaching adults how to sing, and I'm totally about that at this specific location. However, I still didn't see how it correlated to this techniques class. And without speaking to me or the other student that looked like me as well, there's talking skin color here, this professor decided to say, all right, class, Alex, and let's call him Jimmy. Alex and Jimmy are going to sing spirituals at this specific location, and they're going to lead those spirituals. Now, if you think about it, if you have not seen my picture, I'm Black. I'm an African American. And so was Jimmy. Why, you college professor, well published, well known, would assume that because of how I look, that I know how to sing spirituals. Why would that be a thing? Who knows? Maybe I might have been raised by non-African American parents. Who knows? But that's the point. Is at that point I felt isolated. I felt that it was all because of my skin color that I was singled out, and she assumed that I knew spirituals. Can you believe that? Instead of assuming, we should give our students options of saying things like, who feels comfortable with XYZ? Who feels comfortable leading these spirituals? That could have been a question. And who knows? At that moment, I might have said, oh, me, it's me. I'm the person. Or it could have been somebody else in my class. Me and Jimmy were the only African-American students in that room at that time. If I'm going to program a piece that's in Spanish, I'm not going to look at my students that I think that might know it and be like, hey, pronounce these words for me. How rude. I would present it as, who feels comfortable enough to help out with this language? Now, I've only taken 2 Spanish classes in high school, and I didn't do well. So I'm not going to try and pronounce the words and pronounce them poorly. So I'm going to ask, who feels comfortable enough to help us out with this language? That's a way to give back that ownership. And those students felt so proud when I've done that in the past. It gives them an opportunity to be a leader. My co-director loves doing pieces from different cultures. And one of the pieces, or 2 of the pieces that we've done that have been pretty monumental to one of our choirs, were pieces from the Indian culture. My co-director reached out as far as someone who was very, very familiar in the language, and also someone who was familiar in the proper choreography for the piece, the proper movement. All in all, let's be respectful to our students' cultures, their identities, and their backgrounds. Today's special guest is someone that I truly admire for being an advocate for inclusion and diversity in the choir classroom. Please welcome Dr. Jeffrey Benson to Choirwire. Hi, Jeffrey. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Alex. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm so excited to chat with you today about inclusivity in the choir classroom. And Dr. Benson, Jeffrey, I can call you Jeffrey.
Yes, please.
He was getting his doctorate at Florida State when I was getting my undergrad. And there were just so many moments that we shared together that, I mean, we're just great friends now. And I remember one specific moment. I think it was probably when you were doing opera chorus, I think. Maybe. I don't remember. Things blur together. But there was just a moment when you talked about your experience back when you were teaching in Virginia public schools. And you talked about how inclusive your classroom was. And that just stuck with me in my brain, even though that was like almost 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh, I know. Shh, don't tell.
But a while ago, and that just stuck with me. And I admire you for, number one, being so inclusive back, in the early parts of your teaching career, but also to continue inspiring others to be the same way. So that's why I wanted you on the podcast. So,
well, thanks, Alex. Yeah, it's one of those topics that I think the world needs us to continue to talk about. The job is never done, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And it's something that is sometimes hard to speak about, especially if you are in a state that does not allow certain things to happen in your classroom, and you want to make your students feel safe and welcome. And I think it's the balance of tiptoeing the line of, keeping your job. We just had a teacher here in Florida that had the same sort of issue with sort of tiptoeing the line, and it's a mess.
Yeah, and it isn't that, it's sad in 2025 that we even have to think about, wow, we have to be careful about sort of loving and welcoming everybody, no matter who they are or what they look like. A colleague and friend of mine talks about this idea of, for many years, we talked about creating a safe space. Mm-hmm. I'm putting that in sort of scare quotes, that that really our job as teachers and just, kind of people, citizens of the world, that there's no such thing anymore as a safe space, but that there are safe people, and I think that ultimately, no matter whether you're a music educator or any kind of teacher anywhere on the planet, that our job is to maybe kind of model and show for our students and for the people in our lives that we are a safe person, that right. We are welcoming of everybody. And it does make me sad that, there are some places, certainly in this country, where we have to maybe talk about it in a different way. I think nobody would argue that the greatest teachers aren't still just doing it, even if, politicians are saying we shouldn't.
Right.
But maybe we just have to talk about it in a new way and use some different language, which is frustrating. And at the same time, I think 100% important in this climate.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like we could talk about this forever and go on forever. Jeffrey, tell us a little bit about your background and tell us a little bit about your career and your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as Alex said, we met at Florida State. Some wonderful memories at Florida State where I was working on my doctorate, and I did my master's at Florida State as well. And so my time in Florida is like really, really wonderful memories. But before that, as Alex said, I was teaching in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. So I grew up in the D.C. area in Maryland and taught for 8 years in a really cool 6 through 12 school, public school in Arlington, Virginia, but all in one building, 6th graders and 12th graders. So that was really fun experience to have, have students that started with me in 6th grade as little biddies, and then, to watch them go all the way through till the 12th grade. And then after that, I moved to Florida, and then Florida finished up grad school there, and then came out to the beautiful Bay Area of California. I live in San Jose and teach. This is starting my 15th year at San Jose State University, which is wild to me as well. It's like we're the same age, Alex.
I know.
Like as we were back then, right? Like,
right, exactly.
Alex is much younger than me, but I feel the same age as 15 years ago. It's sort of wild.
Let's jump into these questions. So the first one, can you share a moment when you saw inclusivity transform a student's experience in your choir?
Yeah, wow. Hopefully all of us as teachers have so many of these, but one comes to mind in particular. I had a student several years ago who is physically disabled, and I'm teaching at a university now in the beautiful state of California, and she was and is still someone who doesn't have full capacity of her arms, and walked in as a transfer student to my classroom as singer in the choir and in a few of my other classes. And this student was Alex. I mean, it was one of those things where she was just such an incredible addition to the class, period. Just a great singer, a great musician, a great human. But I could tell after the first week or two that she was nervous maybe to approach me to sort of have that conversation. Of course, even at the university level, we have some offices like, our accessibility office that are communicating with us via email saying, hey, teacher, hey, professor, you need to make sure that you're providing these accommodations. But, most times I don't necessarily go find the student and have a conversation with them, especially since they're adults and college kids. But I had this sense that the student was feeling rather anxious. And so I sort of made a note to myself, hey, by week 2, I need to go have a conversation with her. And actually she beat me to the punch, and it sort of still, it's not maybe necessarily anything I did, or maybe it's just in the way that I hopefully created an environment where kids, quote unquote, feel safe. But she came up to me and said, hey, professor, as you can see, I mean, it was a very obvious physical disability. And she, again, didn't have full capacity of didn't have hands and didn't have full capacity of arms, but was holding music and was fully participating. And just said, hey, Dr. Benson, I as you can see, this is what's going on with me. And here's what I need from you. And here, is that okay? And was very nervous. I'm the authority figure. And so the conversation went something like, of course, yes, absolutely. What do you need? And it wasn't actually until a semester later, when the student was in my conducting class, where she really sort of came back to me and said, hey, I don't think I ever realized that I could actually do this thing called conducting, this thing called standing in front of a choir. And holy crap, forgive my language, but like, this is something I can do. That, you know, even with this physical limitation that many people have, you know, said I have, and I, you know, and have, or maybe put that on me, that maybe this was never something I could dream of. Wow, holy crap. You know, and then the conversations continued, because of course I had her for, I think, 3 years total. And we slowly sort of created some accommodations too, that she didn't even think that she there's a lot also, I think, some of our friends and students and people in our lives who maybe do have some limitations, they don't want to admit it. And, you know, it's like one of those conversations, I think, a year in, where she's like, maybe I should be singing with a music stand. Maybe I shouldn't be trying to hold, like, maybe it's not the best thing for my physical person to be holding a heavy binder or holding an iPad in 2025. And so, you know, it was like those conversations continued. And I think if I look back, I think it's one of those things too, where the conversations need to continue constantly with everybody in our classrooms, the able-bodied among us, and maybe those with some other limitations, that we are in constant conversation. I'm constantly learning still as a teacher. And I know you and I were offline before this, of like, what I'm doing today is different than what I did as a first-year teacher, is what I did even as a 10th year teacher. Right. And the conversations need to just continue.
What are some common barriers to inclusivity in choir spaces, and how can educators begin to dismantle them?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because I think that we could list out, you know, the barriers to inclusion and so much of the work that I think many music educators are fighting hard for are often above our pay grade. You know, the ones that come to mind first are the barriers that you kind of alluded to earlier, Alex, and that's coming from politicians and coming from upper administration sometimes. I mean, and many of us have great administrators. I don't mean that that's the case at all places, but a lot of the barriers are related to funding, related to worrying about, as teachers, worrying about our jobs. But, you know, I think I don't want to talk about those. I mean, we can talk about those if you want, but I think the greatest barriers are often, in my opinion, coming from ourselves, you know, that, you know, thinking from the micro level of, like, even those of us who really want to fight the good fight and really want to help, sometimes we're our own worst enemies, and we limit our possibilities. There's a great Thomas Edison quote that comes to mind, something, I'm going to butcher it, but just that we basically are only held back by what we dream or don't dream for ourselves, that the imagination is really sort of capable of so much. And I know that feels like real pie in the sky cheesy, but I really do think that, you know, if we take a deep breath sometimes, you know, there's so much coming at us, you know, especially my friends like you who are public school, you know, secondary, K-12, really, not just secondary music teachers, that, you know, you guys are going 6 and 7 hours a day with only this short little lunch and planning period. And you've got, like, you know, your program, Alex, over 200 students coming at you, that in the heat of the day, if some kiddo comes at you, and not even at you, but just wants help in some way, wants to feel a little bit more included. And maybe there's something that, you know, I know your program at Boone is amazing, but like, maybe there's something that you could be, small thing that you could be doing to help this one child feel more included. In that moment, it's easy to say no. It's easy to say, I can't do that right now, because you're overwhelmed with 1,000 emails and parents and to just, for all of us, I'm preaching to myself right now too. It's like, take that deep breath and say, hold on, I don't have an answer right now. But can you give me a day or 3? Because you know, unless it's something that's for their own safety, obviously that we need to address right away. I'm talking about sometimes the smallest stuff can sometimes feel overwhelming and dumb, and then you actually take a deep breath and you say, I actually can help you. But I find myself, sometimes my answer is just no, because I'm overwhelmed, and it's a me issue as a teacher. And so I challenge all of your listeners, and really myself included, just stop thinking about the emails, stop thinking about the upper admin stuff headache for a minute, and just say, okay, this kid's coming to me because they're asking for help. Maybe it's a small little cry for help, and maybe is there some way I can imagine this being possible, even if in the exact moment I can't.
Yeah. And that also goes back to the many hats that we wear as educators and caretakers and therapists and all that stuff. And this week was a little overwhelming just because there were quite a few emails that either came from parents or teaching or staffing specialists about certain students and said, this person has alphabet soup behind their name and these are all the issues with them. And so, I'm looking at my co-director and I'm like, oh man, I'm overwhelmed because we have 70 girls in this one class and we've got 5 kids that have all of these things, that we have to provide accommodations for. And sometimes you can tell automatically, and then sometimes it's, wait and see. And I kind of go in with my guard up a little bit where I'm like, oh man, I'm on edge, I'm on alert. And those students, I will tell you, they had no problems so far. And they've had no issues. It's almost like all of those emails with all the alphabet soup and all the accommodations didn't even matter anymore. I was like, you just love to be here, And so that's sometimes where I feel like a barrier is coming from administration, setting those barriers already of, oh, be careful, watch out for this kid, And I know that we need to provide certain accommodations, like, they need to go to the bathroom whenever they need to go to the bathroom, or they need to be sat in the front of the room, or they need a peer to help them with whatever. And we're willing to accommodate that. But then, when it sounds like it's something really serious, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. And then they just fit in with everybody else. So it's those barriers that are above that you can't really control.
And I want to highlight that too, because I just think, for me getting at the university level, I'm sadly, I don't have as much contact with some of those offices, like a special ed, one-on-one teacher in the building who's coming and talking to me or sending some more detailed information. And I just get that one email at the start of a semester from what we call the AEC. And that AEC office then is kind of, for me, it feels like really far removed. Yeah. And going back to my student that I mentioned earlier, just having the one-on-one conversation, that conversation, just even if it's a quick little 5-minute, hey, I want to check in with you. How are you feeling about what's going on here? And that conversation then can become ongoing. Sometimes the big stuff becomes absolutely like, oh yeah, I'm great. I'm fine. And then those little things sort of percolate and you're like, great, let's talk about it. But I think as teachers and as people, the older I get, the more I have to remind myself to, hey, can we start from this place of assuming good faith in folks, that if someone's frustrated with me or coming at me or whatever, again, it's not always easy. I'm not always great at it, but start with, let me assume good faith. Let me assume the best. And then I kind of, the hairs on the back of my neck sort of say, okay, cool. This is good. And we can solve this together, sort of as a team effort. Yeah.
I think that's a great approach. How do you approach repertoire selection with inclusivity in mind, especially when balancing tradition, student identity, and cultural authenticity?
Beautiful question there, Alex. I could talk about this for hours, so you'll have to, give me the high sign. No, but I think there are many places across the U.S., at least, and many directors and many schools where we're doing a great job with this already. And I'm looking at places that are thinking about programming and thinking about repertoire in a way that is really exciting. Yeah. And with this lens of, how do I include as many different people, as many different cultures? How do I treat this music with respect? How do I bring in a culture bearer? But I also think that you asking this question is crucial, because I just yesterday saw a sample program from a certain location that I won't name.
There we go.
That was completely the opposite of what the direction in which I thought we were going. Yeah. And this is a program from, 20, 2024, 2025. And it just, my jaw dropped and I thought, oh, the work's not done. The work's never done, right?
Never.
This is constant. These are constant conversations we should all be having still. Yeah. So thanks for continuing to talk about this, because for me, I get frustrated when the conversation is solely around the repertoire itself. Like, hey, aren't we all just doing more repertoire by female identified composers? Aren't we all just doing more repertoire by composers and people of color? And aren't we making sure that we're trying our best to find that beautiful arrangement of a Vietnamese folk song, or a piece from Southeast Asia, or a piece from Western Africa, or wherever, by a person who has really done the work, maybe hopefully by somebody from that culture. And if it's not a person directly from that culture, it's somebody who's maybe steeped in that culture and has done some serious work. And to me, that's only step one. It's like that's step one of a multifaceted sort of multi-step process. And so I keep wanting to just gloss over step one, because I think we've been talking about this for 5 years now in the choral community. At least, I mean, many people have been talking about it longer than that. But I think as a profession, we've been really having this conversation now for 4 or 5 years. And that's exciting that we're many locations, many conductors are beyond just, let me choose repertoire that's not just Western sort of old dead white guy stuff, you know? And I love the old dead white guy stuff too. But even if I'm going to do a piece from Venezuela on my program, and a bunch of music by female identified composers, and then a piece also from South Africa, that where is the cultural sort of context coming into play? Is it just like one quick conversation with your students for 5 minutes a week or two before the concert, and then done? I wash my hands of it. Or is it an ongoing conversation? And I think that's the missing link still. And again, I hope, preaching to the choir on this podcast, I'm sure, but I hope that we're still just doing a baseline of like, hey, let's program through the lens of the global community, and certainly representing, folks in our choirs, but even beyond that, if you're teaching in a school district where the diversity, it's a lot of folks who all have similar backgrounds. Still, I think it's important. We should, can't we still bring in a piece from Colombia, or, a piece from Ghana or wherever. So how do we do that? I don't want to blab on too much, but the world is so small now with, Zoom and quick phone calls, and heck, just asking a colleague, a culture bearer, to maybe do a quick recording, even if they can't, time zones don't work or whatever. Asking folks to maybe do a quick recording, helping us learn the language from an actual culture bearer if there's not one already in your community. Or, hey, would you even record like a 30-second video so I can play it for my students, even if we can't get on Zoom for a full conversation, and they can meet you as composer or as a person who is from the culture. Could you record a quick little bit of choreography, from your culture? Again, maybe I'm not adding that movement in the performance, but how cool would it be? Hey, let's take 10 minutes in this rehearsal and just learn how this culture maybe would move to this piece, etc. But I think some of that too comes from, we all have to agree that programming to the test, quote unquote, or programming to the concert. Hey, what would happen if we all agreed we could do one fewer piece on our fall concert, or one fewer piece on our winter concert, just so we had a little bit more time to actually build in some of the cultural aspects of the piece. I've never once left a concert that I've attended going, gosh, I really wish that concert were longer.
Me either.
Right? No, and it's not, I don't mean that as a slam, but like, no parent is going to be like, oh my gosh, Mr. Pollard, that concert was way too short. I can't believe that my kids only got to sing 4 songs.
Exactly.
You know what? Relax, everybody.
Yeah.
We spent more time doing some sight singing this semester. We spent more time talking about the text and the cultural implications of this piece. And, wow, that would be, I think that most every parent and certainly the students would just be so much happier and enriched by that conversation.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you mentioned that about, oh my gosh, longer concert, blah, blah, blah. But then I think back, and sometimes when we do program things that, are out of our comfort zone and we want to be more culturally diverse, we have no idea who's going to be in that audience that might connect to that music.
Yeah.
And there was a parent that said, my grandmother used to sing that song to me. And it brought back memories of her. So thank you so much for singing that.
Yeah.
So it's,
I forgot. Yeah. Like, do you know Diana Saez's Temporal? There's a brand new, or I guess it's a year or two old now, publishing company by actually one of our colleagues, Alex, that was in the doctoral program when I was there at Florida State, named Angel Vasquez Ramos.
Oh, yeah.
And if your listeners don't know Angel, Dr. Vasquez Ramos is at one of the California State Universities and out here with me. He's down in Bakersfield, California. But he and Jose Rivera have started their own publishing company that focuses on Latin American choral music. And they've got, 10, 20 titles now on their publishing company. But one of their most popular pieces that just came out in the last year or two is called Temporal. And it's a Puerto Rican tune that's just fabulous. It's upbeat and challenging, but not, a good high school can absolutely do it. And I did it for an honor choir this past year down in Southern California, in kind of a smaller community, kind of an hour or two outside of Los Angeles. And I had a parent, the kids, loved singing it. It's a great teaching piece. And a random man came up to me after the concert. I mean, this is an honor choir, so I don't know any of the folks. Right. And he comes up and he's, again, sort of tears in his eyes, like, Dr. Benson, you don't know me, but I just want to say it just brought tears to my eyes, to hear a piece in Spanish, but from Puerto Rico, which is my home country, but also to have my kiddo up there singing that piece, as you said, and we never know the impact. Yeah. And I will say, not so much for me with Spanish. I mean, my Spanish isn't amazing, and it's certainly not my first language, but the other aspect for, I think, all of us is acknowledging the choral people. We like to be the boss. We like to be the authority. We like to, sort of have the definitive answer. And I don't know about you at Boone, but many, many, many of my students grew up in California speaking Spanish at home. That's their first language. Yeah. So I'm not the authority if I'm doing a piece in Spanish back home. And that has you have to set your pride aside and say, okay, who wants to help teach this language? Because I'm not going to be the one that's going to do the best job in this room. And I need to acknowledge that. Yes. But I just did a piece last year in Mandarin, and I really suck at Mandarin. Like that's not, the sounds are very tricky for my ear as a white dude from Maryland, and not ever having even heard the language until I was probably in my college age years. But I had a student obviously teaching the language, and we had recordings to help people, and that we could listen and break it down. But I'll tell you, standing in front of the choir, conducting that piece, I felt really anxious, that this is really taking me, to be selfish for a second, it's taking me out of my comfort zone as the boss who sort of is supposed to know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I would really have to defer to the student who was teaching it and say, hey, Patrick, will you step out and listen again? And actually he even, growing up with Mandarin, even he wanted to take a recording and bring it home to his mom and have her give some feedback too. And that was again another beautiful experience. In the end, the process was scary for me. I felt anxious about it in the early weeks of teaching that piece, but in the end, what a fulfilling to see several students kind of hold their head up a little higher and say, oh my gosh, we got to sing in Mandarin. And that we feel really, I mean, we feel pushed and challenged, but we also feel really lucky to be able to, do a piece this challenging for us.
And what a great opportunity for that student to take on that leadership role, to be able to, be that authority on that language piece, So
amen.
I love that. What practical changes can directors make starting tomorrow to make their classrooms more inclusive? Let's say that they might be that person that's a little bit challenged by the idea of these ideas that we brought up today, but they know that they know that they want to be more inclusive in their classrooms. What are maybe some small suggestions that you would give them?
I think one of the first places we can start is just by asking questions, and that may, if you're standing in front of 60 or 70 students, that obviously it can't be a free for all of, let me just ask the class and have people, but in those couple of minutes of passing in between, we're so lucky that we also get to have our students for multiple years. Most of us that we don't just have them for the 10th grade for the 10th grade English class, and then they move on to the 11th grade English class teacher or whatever. So those conversations again are ongoing, but stopping this thought of I am the sole authority in this room. Obviously you're in charge as the teacher and you are the authority, but saying, hey, let me ask you this, or what if it were a small writing assignment, or, just, hey, real quick, jot down, your thoughts on the repertoire that I've chosen this semester. Again, I don't necessarily have time for a free for all of every kid telling me the 7 songs that they really want me to program, because there's going to be a lot of mess to sort through. But I do think that if students, and heck, even adults in my community chorus or any age singer, feel some ownership, some sense that their ideas are being heard. We can't obviously program a piece for every single student, but in conversation over time, it can be like, hey, you all want to do more of this style of music. Cool. Let's talk about that. And beyond the repertoire, because I think, again, it's really important to get beyond just the repertoire conversation, just inculcating a sort of vibe, if you will. That word is overused in 2025, but sort of creating that climate where students feel empowered to sort of take on leadership and say, hey, Mr. Professor, teacher, Miss, I worried about so-and-so, or I'm struggling with this, or yesterday I felt like my voice wasn't heard because, and here's why. That sometimes, kids have sometimes said to me, well, you're just scary, Dr. Benson. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Yep. And, I think we all, again, we're running around racing through from thing to thing, and you've got to manage, you've got to deal with classroom management of 20 to 80 kids, right? And so, there is some intimidation factor, especially all you young teachers out there listening in your first 5 years. We're not trying to be their friends, right? We do need to have that authority. I don't want to take away that. I'm not like some pie in the sky, like, it should be a full democracy. No. And also, what can we do to create a culture where, it's the same in corporate world, where just if the boss just says it's this way, and never once can the brand new hire or the quietest introvert in the room ever feel like in a meeting that they can't speak their mind, then the culture's not great then, right? But if everybody feels like we start from this place of, if I need to talk to Mr. Pollard or Dr. Benson or whoever, I can. And for some kids, that's going to be in private. For some kids, that's maybe going to be a note or an email. For some kids, that's going to be raising their hand in class and sort of saying, hey, this piece is actually from my culture and you didn't ask my opinion. Can I say that we're too stiff? Can we move and groove on this piece a little bit more? And then us in the moment saying, instead of being like, not right now, like I've got to fix this one thing, saying, okay, I hear you. Do you mind if we wait until tomorrow? Because I want to fix these last 2 things. But yes, I hear you, and I think once we start modeling that listening and that ability to say, yes, I am technically the boss in this rehearsal space. And also every single one of your voices is really important, literally as singers, but your contribution is valued here.
All of these points are so valid. I think it's just also just being aware and being considerate,
Yes.
All of that. And I think
starting from that place of open-heartedness. And assuming good faith,
Well, Dr. Benson, Dr. Jeffrey Benson, Jeffrey, this was such a great conversation today. And I appreciate you for taking time to chat with us on Choirwire today.
Hey, thank you, Alex. This is what an absolute treat. Thanks for having me.
And that's going to do it for today's episode of Choirwire. Thank you to special guest, Dr. Jeffrey Benson. If today's episode sparked any ideas or questions, I'd love to hear from you. DM me, email me, or tag me in your classroom wins. Let's keep building choir spaces where every student feels like they belong. Until next time. If Choirwire has added a little harmony to your rehearsal week or sparked something new in your planning, consider supporting the show. Just head on over to choirwire.buzzsprout.com to help support. No pressure, just a simple way to keep the ideas flowing and the episodes coming. I have ideas of expanding the show past my small platform. Thank you for all you do, and thanks for being part of this community.